Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's three prakim Rambam, Hilchos, Mitame, Mishkav, U'Moshe, prakim Zayin, Ches, and Tes. We are going to start with Perek Zayin. We're going to the rule that the Zav, the Zava, the Nida, the Yerledes, they are Mitame, Mishkav, Bechamisha Derachim, as we'll explain. And then that Mishkav, that Merkav, they will then become Tommy, as we mentioned, on the level of an Av, so they can be Metamin, Esa Adam, Bezayin Derachim, Beshiva Derachim. This is going to be mamish, a fascinating chapter. Perek Shvi has 8 halachas. Well, today, all of the chapters are quantitatively not that long, but let's go through them slowly to really ingrain in our minds all of these detailed halachas. Halacha Aleph, Hazav, and Bechlal. Whenever the Rambam writes Hazav, right, it's called Hazav v'Chaveirav, right? We're speaking about the 4 people that are able to impart Tumas Mishkav, Tumas Merkav, as we have been learning. So what this says, the Rambam, they're Metame as a Mishkav, right? When they sit upon something that was made to be sat upon, when they lay on something that was made to be lied upon, when they write on something that was made to be written upon. How do they impart it? B'chamesh derachim. What's the Chamesh Derachim? Let me say what it's not by touching. Now, of course, if a Zav touches a mattress, the mattress becomes a Rishon, like anything else that he touches. But we're speaking about Tumas Mishkov, that the mattress becomes Tommy like he is on a level of an Av. It's either if he stands on it, or if he sits on it, or Shoich if he lies on it, Nitli's hanging from it, or Venishan, or he leans on it. Kesad, for example, Keli also Lemishkav, or it was made Lemoishav, or it was made Lemerkav. Now, the Chiddush here is Afilu, Hoya, Tachas, or Even, even if we say this mattress is under a stone, there is no direct contact. Im Amad Echad, Mimetame, Mishkav, Al Even. So now he doesn't have contact with the mattress or with the rug. He's on top of the stone that's on top of the mattress. So whether he's standing on that rock, or whether he's sitting on that rack, whether he's lying on that rack, whether he's leaning on the rock, or whether nitlaba, he's hanging from it, lahoir, the Rambam goes out of the order he had in the beginning. I don't know why. Hoyel v'nisnasei al hakli hazem, since he was in some way supported by this article, no matter how it happened, nitma, that is how he imparts this level of tumah. And here, that mattress becomes a avhatuma. That is what we say when we use the word midras. Midras literally means trodden upon. But as now it becomes clear, it's oimed yoishem shrechet nitlav nishan. That's what we always mean when we use the words midras. Halacha beis. Now that we have this mattress that is tummy on the level of an Av could impart tumah, even Adam and Caleb. Now, how does this mattress impart tumah? Now, by the way, the imparting of the tumah, if someone touches the mattress, they don't become an Av. They become only a Rishon. How does that happen? So now let's go. Chena Mishkav or the Merkav, they now are mitam and Esa Adam, Beshiva Derachim, Bechamisha Derachim Elu Shemaninu. Yeah, same thing. If a person later is going to stand on it, sit on it, lie on it, hang from it, lean on it, but also through touch or through carrying. In other words, that item is on top of the person who was taught, who now will become tummy on a level of a rishon. Mishkav and Merkav. Shadoras Allah Hazav, and therefore now the nitma b'midrasai on the level of an Av. Now the rule is Hanageya boy. Oy hanoisa oy becomes tamei, and also hayoshev alav. If you sit on it, if you stand on it, if you lay on it, if you hang from it, if you lean on it, and here again, when it's imparting tumah, it also doesn't have to be direct. From the 5 that we mentioned, the oimed yoshev shrechet nitlav and nishan is af api shehoisa even mavdelos bin hatoyer, who now came, and the mattress that already acquired tumah. Hadei nitma. Shenemaras, it says, Hayoshev alakli, Asher Yeshev olav hazav. If you sit on that which he sat upon, Same way the Zav is able to impart Tuma, which is not even through physical contact, Im Yoshav Shamatoir also Nitma. And now Hazav Matame Merkov Moshe, even though he's not directly touching it. Even, for example, that article is under a stone, he's only touching the stone, and stones are not susceptible to becoming Tameh at all. Afator Mistame will acquire Tuma bin Amishkav Ayamerkav. Shumitachas La'even, even though the Zav is not there anymore on that object. No, it's he departed. The Tuma of the level of Ab remains on the chair, on the mattress. And now it imparts Tuma not only through Maga and Masa, but also through the Oymed Yoshev, Sheikh of Nitlav and Nishan. The Adam Zeh Shehu Lamayla Min Hamidras. Now that this person is out on top, another thing, Metame Begadim Kolzman Shalei Perish Mi Metame of Kamesh Biyarnu, which is quite amazing. So, what level of Tuma will he acquire a Rishon? Normally, the rule is if I become a Rishon, I cannot impart Tuma to my Begadim, right? Because a Rishon cannot impart Tuma to Adam and Caleb. But while I am wearing my clothing, if then I am sitting, standing, lying, hanging, leaning, touching, or carrying, not only do I become a Rishon, but all of the kelim that I am wearing, right, will also become Tameh. All the articles that I am touching at that time will also become Tameh, as we learned in Perek Vav. Now, by the way, this is unlike Merkav. That was the difference. This is Midras, right? If you remember, as we learned in chapter 6, what we learned yesterday. Right, Halacha Gimel. Ein hazav metamei samishkov. A zav will not impart impurity to an object, right? Upon one lies, until this object is holding up the majority of his body, or same thing, ala merkov, ala moshe, ala merkov. In all of these cases, again, we're not imparting tuma through direct contact. But shot me sitting on something that the chair is holding up the majority of my body. That later is daras. He's going to be standing on that which the Zav previously was standing on or laying on. Same way. However, that is only when it comes to the Oymed Yoshev Shechav Nitla V'Nisha. But when it comes to the Mago Masa, Avalim Nisa, even only mi'utai. I'm sorry, Avalim Nasa mi'utai fakert. If you didn't have the roiv, if it's not naga, koyel v'loy naga, he remains starred. For example, Keitzad mixas tamei ala mishkav. If the lesser portion of a person who's tamei, who's a zav, right, will be on a mishkav, or after the tamei did impart tuma to the mattress, now comes a tahor person and doesn't fully lay down on the rock that's on top of the mattress, or on the mattress, not without touch. Then a mishkav tahor, and also even when the mishkav is tamei, these are two different parts. V'hatoir shenisa miktsasei olav, right? If a poor person has one's body supported only in part, Vaited, she remains tahor. Aber now, when the majority of an impure person's body was supported, but by the lesser portion on the surface on which one lies, in other words, roiv of the tzav, but on a little bit of that mattress, then yes, nitma mishkav kula yala merkav kula. Because the roiv of the tamei was leaning, was lying, was sitting. Same thing, the tahor shenisa rubai al only mixas hamidras. Also nitma afal pishul nisa ella, the little edge of the chair. People can sit on the edge of the chair, right? But lean on it. Then they will impart and they will acquire. Halachas. Now we're gonna have very interesting halachas. Halacha dalit. If you have a zav that's mutal al chamisha safsalin, he's lying over 5 benches. The benches are positioned lengthwise and he is lying widthwise. In other words, that his body, the width, the entire width of his body is going over a couple of benches. Whoever has a picture, that's a picture that the Rambam himself drew. So the din is Tameim, right? We just mentioned that the Zav doesn't have to be on the majority of the Keli. It doesn't have to be on the majority of the bench. But his body has to be supported by it. So here we say Tameim because we view the way it works. Shahadei Nisa Rubai Kol Echad Mehem. In other words, every safsal, every bench is supporting the entirety of the width of his body. However, if Munachim L'Rachban, in other words, he was lying along their length, then we say they are tohoidim. Now, the one that's directly underneath him is tummy. But I'm saying, Yechap, in other words, if I'm lying lengthwise, the way we lay on a bed, another detail, guys, none of it is direct. If it's direct, it's tummy because you touched it. But there's a rock on top of everything. Point is that my body was laying on the one in the middle. The fact that a little bit of me leaned to the one to the right, to the one to the left, that's only a minority of me. And they remain tohoidim. That's if I am laying down and I'm awake. But if I am sleeping, which means I'm going to eventually roll here and roll there, because we say that during my sleep, I rolled back, I rolled forth, my length was a borayv on the middle one, then my body was borayv on the one to the right. A person is spread out over 6 items, 2 of his hands on 2, 2 of his feet on 2, his head on one and his body on the other. When we speak about what becomes tummy, only that which is supporting the majority of his body. So if you want to divide the body into these body parts, we say, Ein tummy, mishum mishkav ela zeh shetachas gufay. The one that's under his torso is the one that we say was supporting the majority of his body. Amad al shtei mishkavis, a person is standing on 2 supports, one leg on one and one leg on the other. Here we say they are both tamei. Why are they both tamei? You have to support the majority because that's the way people stand. When people stand, they're not always equally putting their weight on both feet. They lean a little bit to the right, they lean a little bit to the left. So there'll be moments where Rav will be on the left, Rav on the right. So that which is supporting it will at that moment become tamei. Halacha 5. If a person is sitting on a bed, and under each leg of the bed, there was another support. Here again, we want to know whether that also becomes tamei with the tum of mishkav. They all become tamei. What's the logic? You can argue each one is only holding up 25%. Here is the logic. A bed cannot stand on 3 legs. It would tip over. So therefore, we view each leg to be carrying his entire body. That's a great message in life. Right? There's a rule the Yaron called that a misayeya, someone who's only helping, is not given halachic power. Only helping. How do you define someone helping? What would happen if you would walk away? Many people psychologically think they are only in a helping role. They're only misayeya. But if they were to leave, everything would collapse. Then that's not nisayeya. That's called the real support. But you can't say that every leg is 25% because if you were to remove a leg, it would become lopsided. Every leg is carrying. Wow, this is a gavaldic thing. Halacha. Now that is unlike an animal. Under each leg of an animal, there's another stool. And the question is, that's a classical case of, right, we began with the 5 derachim. The tamei is sitting on the animal, right? An animal that never acquires tumah. It's like the rock. But the support under every animal, here again, how do you view it? You have to have the roiv of his body on each support. So the halacha is, they are all tahayros. None of them is holding up his majority. Why didn't we say the same logic you said by the bed? Because we can't. You see, when you take away one leg of a chair, one leg of a bed, everything falls in. An animal can stand on 3 feet. So enochanami, every foot is only viewed as something that's being of support only. Comes out when you judge each leg separately. The nim says Hadavis is only misayeya, and the halach is misayeya ein boy mamish. Wow, this is a good lesson in life. Look at a group of Yidden, a group of people together, right, in a community. Every person is needed because when someone leaves, the dynamic changes. So you can't say you're only a tenth, you're only a 20th. No. But when it comes to Abehema, since the B'cholachas, every leg of the animal, and therefore every stool or every keli that's under each leg could be viewed only as being the Misayeh. And you can't say all 4 are Misayehs. There has to be one that's the Iker. But you don't know which one that is. You judge each one separately. We don't know which one is the one that you can argue is the one that the animal was not leaning on, but therefore the person not leaning on. So then, if we came just to learn this halacha, dayenu, it's unbelievable. Now, the whole logic is because the animal can stand on 3 legs. So now let's change it a little bit. What happens if there's one stool, one keli that is under both of the 4 legs of the animal, right? Or one stool that's under both of the hind legs of the animal, or tachas yada viragla. Now, what would happen if you remove that? An animal can stand on 3 legs. An animal cannot stand on 2 legs. In the circus, they could for a couple of seconds. You understand? You're not supported. Here it is a tame. Because here, let's see if Kevin found the Beis Abad. Here, the picture is good, but you're not going to chop it because you have to see the other side of the picture. Here, the point will be like this, that when you put these beams, they'll be on a olive. So you have to understand that what's keeping the olives together? When there's pressures on the olives, why don't they just don't go to the sides? So there was a certain keli that kept the olives together. Ein breda, so they got crushed. We want to know the status of that side keli if a Zov sat on top of the beam. Oh. Those kalim that are in the hole, that are keeping the olives together, they are tameim. Because we say that they are the tzutz and tachas hakoyrim. No, it's the support. They are keeping it up. If that basket would go away, it doesn't matter that it's not underneath the olives, that's underneath the bud. It means that if that were to be taken away, everything would collapse. Oh. What do you call that when you make a building? You have these side walls, right? Supporting walls. So supporting wall, if that's supporting. Guys, these are one of the cases, not where there's a machlokes Rambam and Ravid that you have all over the place. But the Ravid was not only Zajac to have Ruach HaKodesh, but there are a few times, and that will be one of the times, where he argues with the Rambam, and he writes in the Hasagas Ravid, I have a Chayin with me, but I read the Ravid, he writes at the end that his interpretation of the Tosefta, which is not the way that Rambam understands it, was revealed to him by God in the Beis Medrash. The Meferish, that God of the Adoivisha came to him, he told him the Pshat, and therefore the Rambam is wrong. But we're learning the Rambam. The Rambam certainly held that the Rambam is right. So here's the challenge. If you're thinking about a launderer's press, so Kevin has a picture, I don't know if that's the right picture. The goal of the press is to get rid of the water, right? The baguette is filled with water. Today, the washing machines, they should get a metal, the avoida that they do, right? You can't make laundry on chalamoy, right? Because it was avoida. We don't understand what avoida was. So you have to get it before you hang it up to dry, you want to get rid of the water. So today, there's something called a spin. There, they would put it through a press. Evidently, the press didn't fully press it down. There was still space under the press to put a keli in, a thin keli, to take a keli out, which is why the Ravid says it can't be. Why would someone have such a press? How can a press is to press it all out? But the Rambam's press allowed for some space underneath it. If you sat on this type of press. So we say that all of the kelim that are under this luach hamachbesh are tahorim. Why? Because the Rambam holds that the press is loose. Loose means that it's not fully supported by the garments underneath it. It's supported by the, like if you saw the picture of Kevan, right? The press is in a whole kelim. So the feet of that kelim are supporting it. And not fully ala kelim shetachto. What's the Rambam's proof? If you have a very skinny kelim and you want to put it under the clothing that are under the press, right? Or in between the press and your garments, machnis, even though the press is tied close. So what kind of press is that? But maybe that's the way the presses work. Maybe if the presses would be tighter, they would ruin the garments, right? I love to see whoever saw a picture now. It's an interesting picture because the press that we saw in the picture wasn't just where you had something heavy laying on your baguette to squeeze the water out. You rolled it through it. So maybe if these two rolls are too tightly adhered to each other, it's gonna ruin it's gonna break your thing apart. So therefore, there is a certain amount of space. Because it's a certain amount of space, it's called a weak connection. It's not fully leaning. Why doesn't the top roll in this picture fall down? Because it's supported by the machine. So it's supported by the machine. Things that are under the legs of the machine, right? If there would be one block, that would be kamtali, but not something that's under the baguette. Okay. But you have to read the words. Whoever has an Rambam, no one here. The final words. Don't read the whole drasha. The last words in the Rambam is phenomenal. Allah echaz. Zov shedaras al kli that was not made lemishkav or lemoshav or lemerkav. Even though you can use it lemishkav. So here, guys, if you touch something, that's a whole different thing. We're not talking about touch. If he didn't touch it, it's tar. Tar doesn't only mean, guys, here tar from an up. It means it's nothing. No, he didn't touch it, so he didn't impart a normal tumah from af to rishain. He laid on it indirectly. It wasn't meant for that. Now, what's the example, guys? This I remember learning together in the Gemara. Certain kelim were made to store food. Now, they're big, a barrel. You can sit on a barrel, but let me ask you a question. If someone wants to remove the food from that inside, who wants to place food, you won't have the right to say, later I'm sitting on it. That's the way you define. The keli was made for food storage. So if that's a shot, if someone tells you, you will have to stand up. That's the mean that this is not a multi-purpose keli. It was made for food storage. When you're not using it, of course, you can basically sit on anything that's, that has a solid surface and that's not wobbling. But if anyone were to tell you, you have to get up now because I need to use the keli, that means that the keli was not made for sitting. Case for example, kafa sa'a. So it's a measure in which, right, that people would store it for grain, and you sat on it, or kasa, a certain type of meeting tro, and you sat on it, or let's speak about a paraychas. Something was made to be a curtain. Right now, is it soft? Yeah. When the floor is hard or cold, you want to use it to sit on it. Gesundheit, it wasn't meant for that. If someone now needs the curtain, they're going to have the right to tell you, excuse me, sir, or the sail of a ship. Right? It was meant to direct the wind, not for you to sit in it. I'm not speaking about touch now. Right? You didn't have direct contact. They're completely tahirim. Because Shenemar Asha Yeshiv Olav, superfluous words that teach you, we keep on mentioning, it was meant Hamayuchad li Yeshiva. And loy sho'emrim loy, if you're sitting on the sail while they need the sail, they will have the right to tell you, Amoid v'nasa melachteinu, which is a proof. But if it's a multi-purpose keli, even though it wasn't only meant to be used as a seat, but it was also meant for that, which means that when you're sitting on it, no one has the right to tell you, get up. I want to use it for another purpose. You say, no, right now, I got it first. What will be examples of that? A veil, a cloak, an outer garment, right? Makes sense. An outer garment, guys, people didn't have mattresses, people didn't have covers, people didn't have pillows. They would use them, they would put it under their head. They would use it sometimes to support their bodies. Or you had turmal, a drinking pouch, a carrying bag. They were not made exclusively, that's the way we'll teach it, lemishkov, But still, he also uses it l'mishkav. And the Rambam writes, so the Hilchas Kalim, which is God willing, coming soon. Avayir kol hakelim hamitamim b'midras, that acquire tumas midras, and the kelim that are not shaykh to be mitamim b'midras. The eze keli that's called royal yeshiva, the eze royal yeshiva, the eze royal rechiva. So we'll leave it for that series of Hilchas Kalim. But that was a gavaldik chapter. Now, so in giving and receiving, we have the chamisha drachim. Becoming Tameis through the Shiva Drachim, because you have Maga and Masa. Now we're moving on to Perek Ches. Perek Ches is going to teach us the unique law by the Zav. And guys, remember, we're already up to Perek Ches now. Zav means Zav v'chaveirav. Chaveirav is Zav, Zava, Nida, Yoledis. The four that are able to impart Tumas Mishkov, right? Metame Mishkov u'Moishav. So there's something called Hesed. And we're going to see what Hesed means. And we're going to see, my friends, that Hesed sometimes is more chomer than Maga. Wow. Unlike we had in Perek Zayin, for example, this whole idea that the majority of your body has to be lame. That's only when it's the Mishkov. When it comes to Negiah, if I touch the B'chol, I touch, there has to be a Kazayas Minavela. But if the tip of my finger touched it, I become Tameh. Not by Hesed, we're going to learn there's something chomer by Hesed more than Negeh. Perek Shmini has 11 halachas, beginning with halacha. Kfar b'yarnu b'tchila sefer zeh, that was in Hilchas Tumas Meis Perek Aleph, mamash in the beginning, that she'im hesid ha'adam es hatuma shehi metama b'masa. So, for example, a corpse or certain parts of the corpse impart tuma right through maga and masa. Anytime something can impart it through carrying, included in nitma mishum noisei, it also, right, when you move something, what anything that imparts tuma through masa, Danny, included in masa is hesed. Think about it, right? If you have this cup, even if I didn't pick it up, it's laying on the table. But if I pushed it, even indirectly, means I pushed something that pushed this, that's called carrying. It makes sense. Moving something from its place, carrying doesn't mean that it's heavy for you. That's called masa. Avol, but it's only in that direction. Guys, what's the direction? No, we didn't focus on that. Guys, remember, get this rule. You get this rule, you get the whole Perek. When I carry a mace, I'm tahor prior to. The mace is that which will impart tumah to me. If I touch it, the mace made me tummy. If I carry it, the mace made me tummy. So we learned that hesed, if I move the mace, the best example is someone is in a casket, and you move the casket today. They have the caskets, they are on the kalim with wheels to move it from here to there. You pushed it, that's called masa, even though it's hesed. So there is hesed by all tumas, but it's only in the direction that the item that's tummy is being moved by a person that's tahor. So the tumah goes from the tumah to the person. Only in that direction. What do I mean to say? If the source of tumah is moving the tahor, it doesn't impart tumah. Only by the zav, and the zav and the nidin like this. And that's a great hakdama because people think, well, hesed is unique to zav. Remember, hesed hazav. Guys, you can learn this in the Gemara. Hesed hazav. How can it be? The Rambam wrote, if I'm meset and mace, I'm also tamei. No. There, the tamei is being moved. Here, the chiddush by the zav is that not that the tamei is being moved, the tahor is being moved. We'll give you an example. Don't forget, a zav is a living person. So if a zav moves something else, that something else will become tamei. That's unique to a zav. V'chaver. Get this? That's important. By zav, it's both ways. It's not only this way, even the other way. By every time you read Hesed, like in Tumas Meis, it's only because the Tamei was the one that was being moved by the Tahor. Abel im heisita hatuma es ha'adam. If that were to be possible, if you have a corpse that's moving a person, loy nitma. I know I'm giving a bad example because a corpse cannot move a person, even though we can give se'echatim. The point is that Hesed that we also learn by Meis is only when the tumah is the one that's being moved. not the one doing the moving. Now we're going to begin, right? I mean, he's a halacha base.
If a course is being pushed by someone, and that pushed somebody else in front of the course. There's one person behind the course, one in front of it.
That's a great example. Thank you. So that item that was being moved by the corpse will not become tummy. Exactly, Kate. That's the point. He just wants to give this hagdama because when you see, like, there's unique. Zov is matama behesed. How is it unique? Like this, in this direction, it's unique. There is no such a thing other than here. That when as her adam hatohar, when if the tuma if that which is tamei is moving a person that started, if that which is tamei is moving a keli that started, that should impart tuma. That does not exist. Only by zav chaveirov. Guys, that's the Pedic. And Vizu he hatuma, you say to Vizav, Shalom Matzino Kamaisa B'Chalatoira. Sheim Hasit Es Hatohoidin, that if the Tuma moves the Tor, that should make them tummy. That does not exist. Here it does. And let's get the examples of the Rambam. Ketzad, Hoysa, Kaidam Telas Al Roy Shad Goder, if you have a beam that's positioned on top of a fence, all them Tor, like Kalim, or even a klei cheres, right, was on one side. Comes along the zav, and the zav moves the katza hasheni, moves the other side. So, right, so when the zav moves it, he's moving with that all of these items. Hoyul v'nisnaddu machmas hazav. They were moved because of the zav's moving it. It's as if the zav touched them. Now, guys, this is not tumas midras. At least that it's not that we're saying that hesed hazav will make them an up. Of course not. No, we're moving on. We're not in tumas midras. But the fact that he can impart tuma is amazing. There was no touch. He just moved them. He just moved them indirectly. And utmeim v'nasad yishal tuma din toira. The Ein Sarach Leimer that she'im nasa hazav es ha'adam ayakelim shetiman, and guys also how not as an av, as a rishon. The echad zav zava either yoledes b'chalad dvarim ha'elu. So even though Chazal always speak about hesed hazav, remember zav means zav chaveirov. Hinei lo mada tozak the Rambam sheha'adam hatohar. If someone was tired shehesed es hazav, that would be similar to our Adam Tar that moves a mace. Guys, of course I become Tameh. Nitma Mishum Noisei Zav. That's like carrying the Zav. Now, the Hazav, Shehesid Esator, that's the Chiddush in the other direction as well. Bein Adam, Bein Kalim, Afidu, Klei Cheres, Tameyim. Now let me add you the nuance of the Klei Cheres. A Klei Cheres can only inquire Tumah if the Tumah goes into its inner space. So what's the logic over here? The logic over here is because he's not imparting it through touch. He's not even touching it. He's touching the beam that's moving the earthenware. But when you move a keli, what is moving? Also, the inner part is moving. The inner space is moving. It used to be here. Now the inner keli is there. So you had contact with them from the inside. That's the logic. I mean, the moving. I just want to give you a heads up, a very exciting, God willing, today. The next chapter, Pedic Tez, is going to speak about this Hesed Hazov. There's direct and there's indirect. I'm just jumping ahead, but just to be exciting. Indirect means that if the Zav did something that made this Keli vibrate, he gave it a knack and it's vibrating, and something else was moved from the vibration. So we're going to speak about that. But as long as it's considered the direct movement, even though the Tamei is moving, the Tahar, unique by the Zav, it's Metamei. Now, lest you think that Hesed, okay, Hesed is a Chiddush, but there's nothing like Negia. Says the Rambam, Malachi Gimel, let me tell you something. That's where we're up to, right? Make sure. Yes. That Chomer behesed Hazav Mima Goy. I'll show you how Hesed could be even more chamur, more stringent. She'im naga beklei cheres hamukav tzamid pasol. If there's contact, he's tahor. Even though it's tightly sealed, like we just explained, what happens when I move something? I'm moving the outside, I'm moving the inside. So there we say timohu. That's the logical chayda, because you move the inner in space. If you have a klicheres that's hollowed like a ball, the example that we have in the Tosefta, I used to make a lot of cooking utensils out of cheres. Now think about, you need a bowl. You know how they would make a bowl? They would have this round piece of clay, dovi, and they would hollow it out in the middle. I don't know how they kept it hollow. Now it's better than mukav tzamid pasam. We're speaking about a ball of cheres that was cooked in the kiln. It's hardened, and inside there's an opening. The plan is that you're going to crack it. You're going to crack it in half, and then you'll have two bowls. Trying to point out, you cannot get into the inner space. Before you do that, that cannot become tumah b'maga ever. Cannot be tumah b'tumas oil, right? It's summit puzzle. Yes, beheset hazav. There's no opening yet. Like the Ilpasin Iraniyois, the Iranians pots. They make kalim that no one can use. I don't know, kalim that's just a joke. I don't think Iranius means Iran. I think they called it paras or madai. I don't think the word Iran you have in Chazal, but it's a certain keli that it went through two steps. It's already a cheres. There is a hollow inside, but it's completely round. I mean, this is a summit puzzle super, right? And steroids, it's tightly sealed. There's no opening. Another example where Adarab, the Hesed Hazav, is even more powerful to impart Tumah more than Negiah. Or a tabas that's inside a levena, that's embedded in a brick, and the zav touched the eights or the levena here, right? By negia, right? Belua, but by moving, he moved it. Nitmu akelim habeluim shebetoicham. Bechein chol chayoytze bozem. Gavaldik halacha dalid zav sheichnes yod yiragul avekli cheres. Now we're moving on. So he only stuck a part of him inside the Avir Klei Cheres. Now, if a Kazais Menames would enter the Avir Klei Cheres, you know what would happen, my friends? The Klei Cheres is tummy. Right, we already learned that the Chomer of a Klei Cheres, the Kula is, if it touched from the outside, it does not impart Tumah. But if it enters the ear space even without touch, that we don't say by the Zav. That means if he put his hand in there, he put his leg in there, nor did he move it? Okay. However, he writes over here something interesting in footnote number 9 that does imply that if his entire body were to enter, somehow, even if it would not touch the inner, if his entire body would enter, mashma, that he will be metamed. But not only be'evar. Halacha, hey. Zav, shahaya, kana, achuz, b'toich kumtay. So he has a kana, he has a thin rod that's held within the folds of his skin. Now, what's very important is, and we had this by the Hilchas Tumas Sodas last week, guys, that when a person has folds, I mean, so let's say they're a little bit heavy, or they're older, maybe the heavier, and you can see the inner skin of those folds. As we'll see, it's not called a oir galui, and now if something was held there, that will be an example. And when you have the stick that's inserted in the folds of the stomach, they're walking, and that stick moves something else. Zav moved it? No. Harim to hide him. Why? Because So why does a pasuk b'chal speak about the yadav over there? And why did we use the words naga? Is done biyadav. And now we don't only say yadav. If you push something with your feet, you were maceted. But it means which means hagolui eitzel negia af hesetoi, the power, this chumrah of hesed hazav at sheyasid bagoli shebagufay and veloy sheyasid bebeis hasasadim. Similarly, hoyakana bekumpmay shel tahar, if the rod was in the in these folds of the skin of a person that's tahar, in the other direction. In other words, the impact on the tahar is the beis hasasadim, but the output, right? The input and the output, these should be the words. The hasid vayas hazav, the output from the tamei came from his hands. Yes, tamei. Shahamesid es hatuma is like he carries it. Ucheshem shahanoisim bebeis hasasadim. The din is tamei, as we learned in the beginning of Tumas Meis. Kachamesid bebeisam tamei. Halacha vav. Another din about movement. So they would have these two-sided scales, right? The moisnayim, right? The scales of the mazalas, let's say, not the today's modern scale. So you have the stick in the middle, and you have two pans on each side, and you're going to see which one is weighing down which one. Now, guys, who is moving whom over here? So let's go. Hakaf, hazav is on one side of the scale, and a keli that's made lemishkov oila merkav v'kaf shniya kenegdoi. Now, I want to make something clear, guys. As far as Tumas Hesed is concerned, movement does not impart Tuma on the level of an Av. The Chiddush is that when it comes to other things, if the mace would move something to her without touch, it Bechlal will not be Metamid. The Zav is Metamid on Rishoy. But if the Zav is laying on something is supporting the weight of the Zav that was paid exayim, that thing becomes level, that thing becomes Tamid the level of a Av. So now have that in mind. So the Zav is on one side. And something that shayich to acquire Tumas Mishkav U'Moishav, a Keli Yaakov, Ha'asal Mishkav Elemerkav, a Kafir Shnei Keneged. Now, if Kara HaZav, if the Zav outweighed them, guys, what does that mean? It means the Zav went down and they went up. So then we say, it's only Hesed. It's definitely Hesed, right? But it's not Mishkav. The vart is that if Karu Haim, if they went down, if those Kalim were heavier than the Zav, the Chaveirav, then Harei Mishum Mishkav, and they become an Av. You get it? In other words, what does carrying means? They lifted the Zav. The Zav doesn't have to be on it. The Zav can be, if it's a very wide scale, it can be 20 feet away. I don't care. The Mishkav is carrying the Zav, so they become not a Rishon, they become an Av. Now, let's move on. The Zav is on one side, and not Kalim that are made LeMishkav. That are not made LeMishkav, as the Rambam already said, he's going to go into more details in Ilchas Kalim. Or Eichlin Mashkin, or an Adam. Now, doesn't matter who's on top and who's on bottom. Even though it's not Shaykh Tumas Mishkav, the Rambam wants to point out, no matter which way those Kalim went, up or down, that's called Hesed. And that's the Vart of Hesed. So they all become a Rishon L'Tumah. Anything moved by a Zav, even indirectly, it's as if the Zav touched it. Halacha Zayin. Hazav Atoir, Sheyoshu Al Asafso. They're both sitting on a bench. Or al haneset, or on opposite sides of a board, bisman shehei machgirim. Now, machgirim means when they are misnadnedin, when they are moving. A picture that you can have now is what's it called? I forgot, a seaboard, a saw. I forgot what it's called. The kinder play on it. Seesaw. It doesn't have to be that way. The point is that when you sit here and you move over there. If they both climb the tree is called koichera. It's not strong. How do you define strong or not strong? Says the Rambam, it's a tree that its trunk is not thick enough in order for you to be able to carve out the size of a Reva Hakav. Can't hollow that out inside of it. No, this has to do not with the types of wood. There's a standard. It's not as the circumference is smaller than that size, whatever that is. That's called koichera. Or they ascended a soicha, right? It's a type of booth. That's not strong. How do you define the booth that's not strong? That a person's hand, when you press it, will move it. And whose hand? But these are certain general criteria. Sulam Mitzri, we have a continuously. Sulam Mitzri is not a ladder that's affixed on the ground. It's what we call the ladder. A ladder that you can move from here to there. When it's not nailed into the ground. In other words, when I move, you move. When you move, I move. Or we are ascending either a ramp or on a beam. Oy al hadeles, when it's not mechuber betit, it's not firmly held in place. In all of these cases, and that's pshat hesed hazov, and they will become a rishon. However, if they're sitting in a very large ship, however you define, don't think QE2. A large ships were what we would call a nothing, but it's a boat big enough. That's the word. It's not affected by the movement of one person. Okay? That they are not machgirim. They're not misnadnedim. Right? Even though they're not affixed, like many couches today, it can be, when it comes to Hilchas Nida, we have some crossover over here. It's not moving when you sit down on it. Or that's your kaychan yafa. It's a thick trunk. It's not a flimsy boot. But it's already kavua b'masmeh. By the kevesh, the koida b'deles that are connected to its place already with tit. Over here, afilu ala mitzad echad, even if they are near each other, point is they did not touch each other. Hadei zetahar, because there was no hesed. Halacha ches zav v'toir shoyishneim keechad. If they were together, they were megifim esadelos oipoischen. They were closing or opening a door together. Hest. How do you view that? They're not going in opposite directions. You have these big doors, and they're together closing the door. Hadei zetahar. Amazing. You can't say that one guy's pushing the other. They're going in the same direction. But if they're going in opposite directions, then itma. Inevitably, that's what happens. Even if one is stronger than the other, it doesn't matter which direction. If I'm pushing one way, you're pushing the other way. We're going to affect each other's movements. If one lifted the other one up from a pit, same thing. No, I'm not touching you. You're tied around. You have a rope around your waist, and you're stuck in the pit, and I'm pulling you up. So I guess, im hatame hela esatohar. What's the whole chiddush of this pedek? What's the unique hesed hazov that the tame is going to be metame the tar because he moved him by bringing him up? So don't think movement means away. Movement means close. The im hatohar hela esatame. Now, if the toy is hella esatame, that's pshat carrying. Nitma b'masoi k'mayshu. It's trying to point out that that's not unique to Azav. That's not unique to Azav. That's called carrying. Means even if it would be a mace, and the toy is picking up the mace, very good. Halacha test. Zav v'toy. They were both pulling ropes back and forth. If they're pulling in opposite directions, like we had with the door, then nitma. Okay. But if they're weaving together, whether they're weaving together by sitting or standing, or whether they are grinding together, or whether they are removing a load from a chamoid or loading a chamoid together, Bisman shemasa on kaved, however you define kaved, then there will be tumam, because even though they're going here in the same direction, unlike the door, which is not as heavy as these items, one movement will affect the other. However, however you define that, then since they're going in the same direction, tohar. Halacha yud. Tohar shoyamake es azov. Guys, don't makeh yid autoberisha. No, giving malchus and beis. Now, 1 second. As we're going to see in a moment, when you're giving someone malchus, you're so close to the guy that if the guy getting beaten is going to be removed from the post, the makkah will fall. So if that's the case, just to make it clear, then you're being carried. So what the Rambam is speaking about, your tahar from tumas midras, but the Rambam is not addressing masa as we'll see in a moment. Now, in the other direction, the zav shehika es tahar, the zav is beating the tahar. Timo, why Timo? Because he's moving him, he's leaning him. She'imi mashach hatar, in the latter case, right, the tahar is the one getting beaten. If you were to move him from his place, or he would be able to walk away, the tummy would fall. So it's considered leaning. V'nimtza ki'ilu nishan olav. And what's the word of masa? Like, what's the difference between maga and hesed and masa? Here we go. Well, lefika. So now that we say he's leaning on him, af bigdei hatoid artemein. And final halacha of this Perek, halacha Yudalev, zov shenisa mitzasei alaton. If only part of a zov's body is resting above a pure person, oy tahar shenisa mitzasei alazov nitma. So in Perek Zayin, the first chapter that we learned today, when we learned about Mishkav and Moshav, there we learned you need to have the roif. But that was only Chevre when we were speaking about the Chamisha, the Derachim, Oimeid, Yoshev, Shoichev, Nitwa, the Nishan. But when it comes to carrying, that's the word. Like when it comes to Negiah, you don't need to have roif. You get that? Ketzet, for example, it's Boishal Zav that was placed Lamaila ala Tar, which means the Tar is carrying the Zav. Or the other direction. Hatar Shehiniach, it's Boy Lamaila ala Zav. That's from Masa. That's a chiddush. In other words, guys, contrast that with the beginning of Perek Zayin. You'll appreciate it. Right. Chiburei Hazav are entities that, while they are connected to the Zav's body, they are considered part of his body, even though these are entities that they replenish themselves, which are teeth, nails, and hair. Okay, they're called Chiburei Hazav. That if they were being resting on the tar, you know how indirect it is. So let's say you have this Zav that had Langahur, or he has a long beard, and some of it is laying on the shoulder of a tar, or the other direction. Chiburei tar, only that is being carried by the Zav. That's also called carrying. What is called chiburim, like we just spoke out, the shinayim, the tzipornayim, v'haseir shalahem. However, the Rambam says, Yirali, Shatumazu is only midivreyam. It's once we establish in Perek Zayin, when it comes to the other normal ways of midras, you have to have, by Oymed, Yoshev, Shoichev, Nitla, Venishan, you have to have the majority. Here we're saying carrying is different. But here we're saying, how far does carrying go? That even chiburim are called carrying for the whole person? That's midrabanan.
Who's carrying who?
Doesn't make a difference which direction. That's the word of a Zav. That's the whole thing we're learning in this chapter. Very good. By Zav, Noisa goes in both directions.
So the distinction that when it's this minority, that then it's just rabbinic, whereas before we said it.
Yes. If my hand is on top of the shoulders of a Zav, I become Tamei because the Zav is carrying me. Midorais. I is not carrying Roiv. Doesn't matter by noise. If my hair is on a shoulder, that's midrabanan. Okay, today's final chapter. It's a relatively short chapter. We're going to learn more very interesting halachis of Hesed. Now that we established the chiddush of Hesed, that not only is it, as we have even by Tumas Meis, that if a tahar moves a mace, he becomes tamei. But if the source of tuma is the one doing the moving, you're not going to find in any place other than in the Zava Chaveda that also imparts tuma. Now, what does moving mean? So we had him paid a ches, shaking, like going up a tree together. That's also called moving. Now we're going to have phenomenal applications of really what halachically is called direct hesed imparting tuma. Guys, imparting tuma on the level of addition. The Zav is an Av that becomes tummy only addition, but it becomes tummy. Tuma said it. And what will be considered indirect movement, or we're going to speak about vibrations, direct vibrations, indirect vibrations. Vibrations. Okay, and we're going to have the final rule that Mishkov and Merkov that we learned today in Perek Zayin, they acquire Tumas Av. Once they acquire Tumas Av, then they could impart Tuma. And the Rambam wrote in Perek Zayin, they impart Tuma b'shiva derachim. But when it comes to Kalim, Oichlim, not Adam, which is Perek Zayin, in this chapter, the Rambam is going to go back to that, and it's going to say that Mishkov and Merkov that couldn't impart their Av, but they can only impart Tuma to Kalim and Oichlim only through touch. Perek Chi has 5 halachas, and maybe we can make a hachlata to start davening earlier today if you push it. Perek Chi halacha al. These are short chapters. I just want to learn them slow to remember them. Hashem will have rachmanis. Just when it comes to memory, this is clear. When it comes to Torah, it has to do with how holy we are. Pasha, I know this. I had classmates that when it came to, they were good at math, they didn't remember it. Torah, they don't forget. You know what I'm saying? Rabbi David Lulian, he's a Yid at Tzaddik, he's a Rav here in the valley. If he doesn't forget, because it's Torah, because he's taka holy, right? Kevan, you remember him? He's still around, unbelievable. And when it came to the Limud, he learned the Mordechai. Okay, he was smart. He wasn't a genius. When it came to this, he did I guess not. Yo, davar shahaya muchubar ba'aretz. Guys, if something is supported firmly, it's connected firmly to the ground, or connected by cement, by mortar, or it's connected by nails. Musmar b'masmarim. Im hoya koicha yafa b'chazak. If the item itself is also something considered strong, and the hikish olav hazav, and the zav gives a knack, the zav bangs on it. And what happens? Hikish, and while he banged on it, there were other items resting on it. There were kalim on it, there were oicholin on it, there were mashkin on it. And they moved, right? And it either only moved or even more. She pilon, it fell down. We say, think about this, guys. Why are they tohayim? See, there's a difference between moving and vibrations. Because all the Zav did was he banged on the scali and it began to tremble. Yeah, the trembling is that which caused that keli to fall off or to move. That's called indirect. I meant that the keli that you may tremble itself is firmly attached to the ground, which means you did not move it. You only made it sitted, and that made harel tohoid. But the however you define this, the poil mamish. But if that which the zav banged on was not in itself strong, elam is not made. It's something that can move easily, and the hikish olav hazav. And now vehipel oihenid bekoyach hakoas kelim oyachalam mashkin. Then yes, harel tomelim. Ukeilu has sitan shenemi koychen aflu. All of these items, they were moved by the keli vibrating. Elama, if the keli is chazak, trying to chop it good, so then the zav made it shake. Then that made the oichle move. It's removed. If the keli itself was not firm, so it's as if
it's indirect. The vibration moved it. If it's versus if it was.
Yeah, that's why, Kevin, that's why we keep on saying by Hesed, that if I take a pole and I move it to something else, that's called direct, even though I didn't touch it, because I'm moving the pole. Here, if I'm unable to move the pole, I only made it vibrate, that's called indirect. Zaklal, kol shenafal mikoyach hasei tamei. If it's not firmly attached, then that item moved. So the movement is what caused it to fall. That's the word, not vibrate, the movement. But Nikoya Harada, anything that only fell because it was trembling, Vaharaya, the keli that I banged on, could not have moved. It's a firmly affixed. Vibration is not called direct. Taught. Case that, for example, Hikish ala ilan, if the Zav knocked on a tree, Oy Soicha or on a booth, and guys in Pedig Ches that Rambam defined how what's the definition of a tree that's weak or a Soicha that's weak. Oyal Sulam Mitzri or on a ladder, She'en Kavod B'Masmed. Oyal Koida or Vidalis V'Kevesh. Again, Lohoiv that the Rambam in the previous chapter who mentioned these three, mentioned them in a different order. The Stam and the Braises and the Tosefta, sometimes they mentioned in one say that by one Tana, sometimes in the other, another Tana. I don't know what the logic is. So then She'en B'Chavarim B'Tid, they're not firmly held in the place, they're not cemented in. Oy Shehikish Al HaNeged, or you knocked on a door bolt, or al hamanul on a lock, or al hamashoit. A mashoit is an oar, right? You know what makes these rowboats move. None of these things. It's a piece of wood. It might have some weight, but it's not a fix. And while the Zav made this banging, hipel oicholin oy mashkin oy hakelim. Or even if those Eichalim and Mashkim didn't fall off the other side, but they moved, they are Tamei because you moved it. Yeah. So if I moved A, that moved B, that moved C, that moved D, that's called Hesed Hazah. But if the Zav banged on a tree, which is stark, Oy Soicha, Shkoichin Yafa, Oy Sulam, that is Misumard in its place, Oy Alakevesh. Here again, the Rambam even over here changes the Seder. That are affixed in wherever they're placed with mortar or with cement. What's a marish? A marish is some sort of central building beam that's very starkly affixed. Guys, even though the oven is not affixed, it's considered something that's affixed, it's heavy. And mamish, while you banged it, or even not only did they move, but even if they fell off, because vibration is called indirect. Movement is called direct. Halacha base. What am I thinking? I'm thinking that isn't it the opposite, Danny? When I vibrate something that cannot move. So it's as if my koyach goes directly through it.
If it vibrates, that means you're moving it. If it's sturdy, you can't cause vibration.
No, I would say that. Okay, and I remember those toys that kids play with. They have these 3 or 4 balls, and you knock on one side. If I put energy in an item that's affixed, so my energy cannot express itself in that item, and it goes to that which that item is in. Doesn't that mean that my energy went directly to it? We're not saying that.
Not if the item is attached to the ground. If it's solidly attached, it should not have vibration.
But no. 1 second. Okay, here it's having vibration. The item. 1 second. The item is having vibration. You know what the example is? Okay, let's go with the tree. Forget about the vibrations. There's a tree. All right. There's something on the tree, and someone says, "Can you please get that off?" So the Zav goes to the tree and he shakes the tree. That's what we're learning about. That remains starred. Okay, right. Halacha base. Tanur shehoisa hapas devukaboy. There's a loaf of bread that's attached to the inner wall of an oven. The outer wall doesn't matter. The hikish ala tanur. We just said that a tanur is considered heavy enough. The nafalakikur, you succeeded. You got the bread off the wall because you banged it. Afilu hoya truma, which is susceptible even more than other chulin. Hadei zatar. Tanur is considered something heavy. But if when you banged the tanur to shake the bread off, you broke the tanur, you shattered it, and a piece of the shard was clinging to the loaf while it fell, even if it's not truma, only chulin. In other words, a blow that causes an oven to break, that's called movement. Because if my zetz broke it and that's why it fell, that's called moving it. Yeah, and a Zav is an Av, and Hesed Hazav makes it a Rishon. Chulan, are you kidding? I mean, obviously, when it comes to a Chulan, it has to be susceptible to becoming Tamei. Speaking about a bread that's made out of flour and water, not made pay, this doesn't matter. Whenever it could, it becomes Tamei. Eina Mishkov, Ayamerkov, Metame Kalim. Here we go. The second topic of this chapter. So yeah, we learned in Halacha Perek Zayin again that once something becomes Tamei Midras, which is an Av. So if someone is Oimeid or Yoshev or Shoichev or Nitla or Nishan Oy Masa, Oy Maga, it becomes Tamei. That was Adam. Perek Zayin was Adam. Now we're going back and we're going to say that Eina Mishkov Ayamerkov, which is Av, it cannot impart Tumah, not to Kalim, nor to Echolin, nor to Mashkin, only through direct touch. Ela b'magabul vad, aval moya Kalim, or Echolin Mashkin. If they were Lamayla min hamidras, that's great. No, you have this mattress. On top of the mattress, that the example that Rambam keeps on giving is you have a big stone on top of it. Big stones are not susceptible to becoming tummy. And first the Zav laid on that stone, sat on that stone, stood on the stone. So now the mattress is enough. Now, if an Adam would come and sit on the stone, they don't even know what happened. They'll become tummy. But if you placed over there Kalim, Oichlin, Mashkin, or in the other direction, Midras Lamayla Mehen. So now you would think, if you place an oichalin underneath it, then the oichel is masa. It's carrying the midras. No, it is. It does not become tummy. There's no direct touch. In the case where there's no direct touch. Afilo lo hifsik b'neim. Ela niyar. And niyar is weak. It's flimsy. Choyel v'le naga bohem harei elu tohoidim. Yes, Midras will impart Tumah, the Shiva Derachim, only to Adam. That's it. Chein, im heisit ha-mishkav es ha-kelem. If this mishkav moved kelem, moved echolem, moved mashkin, they remain tahor. Because, guys, what does movement? Movement is included in what? In carrying. In carrying. We just established that Kalim, Oichlin, and Mashkin that are carrying the Merkov. So if Masod is not a medium through which Tuma is imparted, neither is Hesed. Beautiful. Halacha dal. Hazov Ator, Sheyosho b'sfina ketana. As we had in the previous chapter, Hayechoyla lo hamid ba'adam echad. That's the example. Shigla means that one person, not only when he goes in it, everyone feels that he stood into it. He's able to tip the whole boat over. So a rowboat. Oy, asta, some sort of flimsy raft. Oh, these are things you can fit more than one person. That's called katana. One person can manipulate it completely. Or if they're both riding on an animal, the same animal. Big day noigim zebozem. Had a big day hator temeim midras. Midras. Why? Why midras? No one, you didn't have the Chamisha Drachim. Tell you why. Because when they are in such a small vehicle together, there's a possibility that unbeknownst to them, for a moment, not touch, leaning, that he pushes v'tumasim b'safik shema daras hazov aleim. Let me say better. What was the Chamisha Drachim? Nishan, leaning. That's what it is. Stepping, you can say, I know I didn't step on you. Maybe I leaned on you. And leaning means that if there was a moment where when I was leaning on you, if you would have moved, I would have fallen. That's the definition of halachic leaning. Like in the times of davening where you have to be standing, people, especially when they get elderly, so they lean their hands on their standard. Leaning means that if you were to remove it, they would fall down. That's called leaning. It could have happened. Guys, don't forget, Zav Chaverov. He's giving away, Nida is more common than a Zav, at least in our world. We're aware of it. So the din is, in one bed, there's a possibility that the Nida leaned on her, that she stepped on her or on her clothing, just your nishan on the clothing. Very good. The only part of the body or the beged on the tohoida that is not tamei is that which she's using to cover her head, her tichel. Because when two people are together, I could lean on your shoulder, I can lean on your garments. I'm not going to lean on your head. And if I did it, we would know. There's no doubt over it. We had this little flimsy boat before, but now you have the godim that's hanging on the sail. Yeah, the Tommy could have leaned on the tohar, but he didn't lean on the sail. The tohar. Final halacha on the chapter halacha hey.
Tommy moving the boat itself doesn't travel up to where the mast is to affect those clothing. It's not called.
So let's go, Danny. So we have the boat. The boat is Tomei Midras. Sfiniktano, and that's an av, and it can only impart tuma b'maga to kalim. The maga, there's no maga, it doesn't become tumah.
So the mask.
I don't think it's called completely.
It's not called.
No, probably not. Okay, good point. Halacha hanitchak berachayim. Someone is pushing a mill. Shahagoy b'toicham. And don't forget, why is he mentioning the goy? Because we learned Shabbos, I think it was Perek Shlishi, or one of the first 3 chapters, that Midrabanon, goyim, males and females, once they reach the age where Shayach Biyah, right, Teisha Shanam V'yem Echad, Shloisha Shanam V'yem Echad, they have Tumas Zav. Oh, so this is a Zav. Oy Zav V'chayoytza boy. No, Chayetza again. Zav means Zav Anido in your letters. So then, Harei Bigodav Tumei Midras. Same concept. Be'ezer Chaim Amru. Be'rechaim shemenadnedim es akarka. It shakes the ground to the extent that when you are moving this mill, it's such a trembling that if you're standing, it's going to move you around. The Dover Boraru that Shtumel Misafik. Shemanekar hatame v'doras al big dehator. Notice the Rambam is ending the Pedic with what he started. What did he start with? That the trembling that's coming through a movement of a zav is called indirect. So when you have Mistama, this Mishnah, this Braisa, that you become, it must mean connected to what we just learned in Halacha Dalet. It's not because of you moved it. It's because maybe since people are moving around, unbeknownst to you, the guy stood on your begadim. There was an act of actually you're becoming a midras. Elamah, we don't know, so it's Tamei Misafek. Givaldik, to be continued. Should have